Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 337. I'm your host, Michael, joining me. Um, Per usual, Gail from Communities Digital News, NY Fights, and the Falcon Valley Group. Daniel from the Inscriber and 4 Boxing News. What's going on, lady and gents?
Hey, this is your celebrity edition of the Pound for Pound report.
And by celebrity, we mean us.
That's correct.
Indeed. For those who are new to the show, for Pound Box Report live YouTube show podcast, as well as a website discussing all things boxing. The bottom line is, when the motto is, when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. If you want to find all information about the show, the site is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. I'm going to repeat that, p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, on the top front page of the site, you can find links to where to follow us all over the podcast realm, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, not iTunes, but Anchor, any and everything else in between. Where you can check us out on social media, Twitter, IG, Facebook, Tumblr. Where you can email the show. You can email the show at p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. Also got links to where you can donate. Got PayPal, Cash Me donation links there. Be a friend, let donation be the best nation. And last but certainly not least, if you want to check out my online coaching page, I am an online coach with beachbody.com. Please check it out and take a look at all the programs, fitness programs via Beachbody and Beachbody On Demand, be it PiO, Bar Blend, Morning Meltdown, which the ladies seem to like, weightlifting programs like Lift 4, Body Beast, the old school P90X series, the Insanity of an Asylum series, the new 645 program that's set to drop 6 weeks of the work, which I would argue is the hardest one. Or if you're looking for a boxing program specifically, please check out 10 Rounds. So please check out my coaching page. Take advantage of the 2-week trial. Throughout the year, you get two. If you take part in the trial, you get 2 weeks of free access to all programs on the page on Beachbody On Demand. So I strongly suggest you would take advantage of that. Or you just want to get yourself into some decent shape. My Let's Build Together fitness program. Please check out my coaching page. That's on the bottom portion of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report site. Let's get things going. Recapping what took place this weekend. Really light episode, not that many fights. I mentioned last week that Showtime pay-per-view. I refused to talk about the main event because I got standards, but I will talk about fights on that card. Took place in Cleveland this past Sunday on the 29th. The main undercard, the first undercard I want to talk about is Amanda Serrano, generally held as one of the top 3-5 women's pound for pound fighters in the sport. She defended her unified WBC, WBO world featherweight titles against current WBC 122-pound champion Yamelith Mercado. Good overall fight, Gail. Serrano won, and she pretty much had her way throughout, won by decision. Afterwards, my thing is this, maybe an unpopular opinion. Is Amanda Serrano one of the best in the sport? Yes. Is she arguably the most complete fighter in women's boxing? Yes. But I still have a little beef with her because she's a 7-time champion, right, from 115 to 140. I didn't like her comments post-fight. They asked her about her future. Katie Taylor, women's undisputed lightweight champion, was mentioned. She said that she wants to unify the titles at 126 first, become undisputed champion, then move on to a fight with Katie Taylor. In a sense, she made the Taylor fight secondary. My issue is, why doesn't she make that a primary thing? They were close to making a deal last year until, from her, it's widely reported from her end, she backed out because it may not have been enough money on the table for her. A fight with Taylor much less a win against Taylor. To me, that has more weight, gravitas than an undisputed featherweight title. I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. You can check it out on threekingsboxing.com. Shout out to the fellas there. Head of Three Kings 2K, head of media relations, Bo. You've heard him on the show several times. Lead writer Bakari, fellow senior writer Jarrell. Yeah, your thoughts about, am I wrong to be that critical of Serrano um, in spite of her impressive win?
I think a little bit. It was an impressive win. She was disappointed because she really wanted that knockout, that clean knockout win, knowing she had a huge platform to perform on. She really wanted to give it her best. But boy, give a lot of credit to her opponent, Yamelith Mercado. That woman is tough, tough. Wow. Granite chin. She was damn beat up, and she was determined to finish on her feet to the final bell, and she did. And you saw that fist pump when she was done, like, I did it. Let's remember, Mercado came up a division to face Serrano. So this was a nothing to lose sort of fight for her. She retains her titles at 122. And I can't help but think that as Serrano watched her opponent, she started thinking, ugh, I will need to go up 2 divisions to fight Taylor. They're 14 pounds apart. That's a lot, in the smaller weight divisions. And I wonder if watching what she was doing to Mercado, who's very talented, although somewhat unknown to fans, that she sees, as the same thing going to happen to me with Taylor. There's weight divisions for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we saw it with some of the other mismatches on the card. She's got to be smart about it. And she has gone up and down, mostly down in weight. She's a 7-division champion, but she has fought as low as, I think, 108, 115 for sure. She knows what it's like to bounce around those weight divisions, and that is not something you do lightly. So I'm wondering if she is calculating how that's going to work out and wants to get that undisputed achievement first before going for broke against Taylor, where she's going to have to fight someone much bigger. She risks, getting hurt, falling short of her other goal. I think that's just some strategy going on in her head. It's not ducking. It's not, any sort of cowardice or doubting her abilities. I think she's just plotting out what's the best career path for me? What's the best path for me to be considered the top pound for pound fighter? She was asked that directly after the fight, and she was, a little reticent to say she is, I think, out of respect to some of the other top women, but she's absolutely in the conversation. When the day comes that she's considered for the Hall of Fame, she's a shoo-in. She is one of the hardest punchers, pound for pound, among all of the women. Watching her body shots, they were impressive. And honestly, I do not know how Mercado managed to stay on her feet for that whole fight. And let me just end my part of this discussion by saying, if they had 3-minute rounds, there would have absolutely been a knockout in this fight.
Yeah, that's a topic we touched on or went a lot heavy into during our last episode. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your reaction to her win. If you have any word in terms of Mercado and how she performed, because I thought that she make it stopped, but she hung in there throughout. I mean, there was a moment, I believe, in the last round where um, where she got hit straight right on the button, right on the chin. She wobbled, and then she looked at Serrano. She gave the face like she kind of mean mugged her a bit.
Yep.
it was trippy the way that happened. It was trippy that sequence. But yeah, thoughts on the fight, and again, your reaction to her post fight comments in terms of what she wants to do moving forward.
As far as the fight itself, yeah, that I think that was in the 8th round where she caught her in she was already cut on the cheek. She caught her right from the pages, and you got to give it to Mercado. She hung in there and she faced it in, and it looked like it was going to turn into a brawl. But I think at that point she kind of knew the fight was already out of her hands, and it's not good to slug with a slugger in many ways. So, as far as the performance, Amanda Serrano did what was expected to do. She came in, she threw combinations, she outworked, she outboxed, she out-toughed Mercado. But we expected that considering what Mercado's coming from. But Mercado hung in really well. She switched up the fight plan when she knew that it was, like I say, it was a bad idea to try to slug with Serrano. And it led her to win the fight. And while I do agree with Gail that if there would have been 3-minute rounds, yeah, she would have been knocked out. But ultimately, this was a fight that was more of a showcase for Serrano more than anything. Now, I get her trainer being mad because, let's face it, the whole thing leading up to her was her reaching or getting close to the milestone of overlapping Christy Martin for the knockouts. And the way he said it, you're supposed to be a Mexican warrior, stand it in. You just say, dude, you just wanted the knockout. Ricardo didn't give it to you, and you're mad. Because now it's another fight that she has to wait to get it into. And apparently, he kind of, according to Mercado herself, and I think it was a Facebook or Instagram post, dude wound up harassing her while she was going to the hospital. So that's another bad thing when it comes to Serrano's corner. But as far as the post-fight statements, we kind of know what Serrano's about. Serrano's about trying to get the best fights and the best money possible. This was probably her best payday in the boxing ring. But we know if she doesn't stay active in boxing, if the pay isn't good enough in boxing, she is more than willing to go back to MMA and handle that front. And we know that's animus there when involving Katie Taylor. So they know that repeating that as such, it could be a situation where Katie's team may not really want Serrano to face because they can see her losing to Serrano. And after the Pursoon scared, I think that Eddie Hearn wants to not have that close of a call again. But like I said, for Serrano, she's going to do what she's going to want to do, whether it's in boxing, whether it's in MMA. It depends on how it goes.
Yeah, in terms of your comments about Serrano's trainer, you're talking about her lead trainer, Jordan Maldonado, who was yelling at Mercado after the fight, and to your point, question her hard, and she's not fighting like a true Mexican. That's dumb. That's dumb. She stood in there all night long. She she ate punches, and then she fought back after getting hit. Calm down, sir. And yet
I think we lost Mike, or my connection's slow.
I think we did lose our producer, leader, fearless forecaster. So let's carry on ourselves. Yeah, we did. So let's carry on ourselves. speaking about some of the other fights on that undercard. Now, Daniel, since Michael is away, we can now make the rules. Any comments on the main event? He was determined that we would not talk about it. I think we got to talk about it.
As far as the actual supposed combat, I'm not going to say anything. All I'm going to say is the wrong. Let's see here. Okay. The Paul brother that did not film a dead body in the Japanese suicide forest apparently wore the most Cleveland of Cleveland shirts.
He did. He did. And both of us must confess, we were watching. We were watching on Sunday night. Yeah. It's undeniable, though, the draw. There was a packed arena of happy people who bought their seats, paying attention.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I lost connection.
Oh, we threw you out, man, so we could talk about the main event.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I lost connection. What I was trying to say is, what Daniel was in piggybacking off what Daniel said about Serrano's trainer. He's referring to Jordan Maldonado. That was stupid and punkish and punk move on his part. His first allegiance is to the fighter, his fighter, Serrano. His accusations about her Mercado essentially not having heart and not fighting like a true Mexican warrior. What are you talking about, sir? Serrano hit her with punches all night, and was she winning? No, but she kept fighting back, and she stood until through to the end, to the final bell. Unlike other fighters that she's been in the ring with, that was stupid. It's not the first time he's done this kind of nonsense. Has been kicked out of the corner before because of his mouth, and it's silly. It's silly. Why are you sitting there barking like you're actually in there in the ring? You respect what you do in terms of Serrano and her ability and your role in her, in terms of who she is as a fighter, yes. But you are what you are. You're a trainer. You're not a fighter. Fall back. Fall back. And in terms of Serrano herself, again, I still think a fight with Taylor weighs more. I would not even have a problem. Look, World Boxing Super Series earlier this year announced that they're going to do a women's tournament focusing on the women's junior lightweight division. I would not mind Serrano being in that mix against the likes of Hamadouche or the Korean champion, or any of the champions at 130 pounds, or Natasha Jonas. Put her in there. Let's make a tournament out of that group at 130 pounds. But yeah, Undisputed is cool, but I just think there's more for her. It's more for her financially and otherwise.
Well, she's going to have to balance financial opportunity and legacy. And, we fight for money. It's a business. It's a career. You should be making the maximum amount of money you can in the shortened time frame you have, and no future fights guaranteed, because we don't know what's going to happen to you in the ring. But the real accomplishment, the athletic sporting accomplishment in combat sports, which is so hard to do and still very rare, especially in the 4-belt era, is to become the undisputed champion of your division. And if it's me and I can do that with the potential of a big money fight still ahead, absolutely, that's what I'd do.
Let's move on to talk about what can be considered the fight of the night. And no, I'm not talking about the main event of that pay-per-view card.
Oh, we tried to sneak it in there when you were gone. We did our best.
I'm talking about the guy who they described in the ring during the fight as having the porn star name. Montana Love, Cleveland's own Montana Love, who it will turn out to be a really entertaining scrap. Stopped former IBF 140-pound champion Ivan Baranchyk. Um, Baranchyk, by the way, took place in what many would consider the fight of the year of 2020, I should say, um, against Zepeda. I'll go to you, Daniel. Yeah, I'm surprised. I didn't know much about Montana Love, excuse me. But yeah, he got hurt several times, but persistence paid off. I think fighting in front of the home crowd paid off, and Baranchik's chin or lack thereof aided and abetted the fight as well. A little bit of controversy at a certain point of the fight, but yeah, I ended up watching it, and I was entertained.
It was a good fight. The only main thing I had to air in my disappointment is, okay, the kid's from Cleveland, and they're supposed to be pay per view. You could have at least hired Bone Thugs, Ray Cash, the actual Soldier Boy, who goes by Jammer nowadays. Could have got one of those cats to bring him in, and the place would have exploded. But as far as the fight itself, Love did show a lot of skill. Baranchyk showed good tenacity, but unfortunately, as the fight went on, you saw that Love was landing more combinations. You saw that Love was starting to time Baranchyk more. And say what you will about technically how the fight stopped, because it only was one knockdown. But if you consider the fights, because Zepeda was only the last one, but the fights that Baranchyk has been on recently, it was tough to see him again. I think it was the corner that wound up stopping it. They did the right thing. And because at that point, like with so much of the damage that Baranchyk has taken in his previous fights, it would be sacrilege to try to send him out again. Yes, he could land probably a haymaker. Yes, he could probably have knocked down Love, but Love at that point probably would have landed a combination and it would have been worse. So they did the right thing. I do hope that that's Baranchyk's last fight for his own sake, for his wife's sake too. And with Love, like I said, it's a good win against a former champion, against somebody that has faced top level competition. And you're in a division that is going to get very, very interesting soon enough, like depending on what happens with Josh Taylor. Because if he does just one defense and then leaves, all those 4 belts are for the taking. So good on Montana Love, put himself in a position where it may not be immediate, but he may fight for one of those belts down the line.
Your take on what happened, Gail? I should say that after the fight, Love did call for a fight against undisputed 140-pound champion Josh Taylor, as well as a showdown with Gervonta Tate Davis. The two have beef, have history, Love and Davis. But yeah, after the fight, Love said he wants a shot at him, a shot at Davis, who we will talk about in a little bit.
I love me some Montana Love. I'm one of those people firmly on the bandwagon. Good for him for seizing the moment that he was given. Having said that, we need to slow the roll just a little bit because it's not entirely clear exactly how much Baranchyk's demise was involved versus Love's sole performance and skills. Baranchyk, no doubt, took an insane beating from Jose Zepeda. It doesn't look like he recovered too well. It looks like the accumulated damage was really as much as it looked like. Sometimes these guys have truly amazing powers of recovery. Not Baranchyk. It took its toll, and it showed. And good for trainer Pedro Diaz after he saw Baranchyk make it to the corner only because he got hit that hard at the bell. Boy, I really do not know how he got to his feet. That is a veteran's muscle memory. I think he stood up and he was still out cold. It was hard to see anything flickering behind his eyes once he got up. And yes, he answered the affirmative. The referee asked him twice, "Are you sure you want to continue?" Thank God the bell did sound. It would have been horrible. And Pedro Diaz didn't even hesitate. He didn't ask him. He sat him down. He started cutting the gloves off. And Baranchyk protested feebly, admittedly, but he was done. And it was clear Diaz recognized he was way behind on the cards. There was no point to continuing. But I want to see Montana in against somebody else who hasn't come off a fight like that. I mean, nobody's come off a fight like that. That was fight of the year. So let's see him against a fresher opponent. If he's still that good, we uncovered a hidden gem, a guy who's been toiling out there, doing his thing, assembling his skills, and he's putting them to use. It's about time we have a guy like this emerging from the heart of America, from the Midwest, and he's got star qualities. He's good on the mic. He's got an interesting family. There's just a lot to love about Montana Love. I do need to know if that his real name. If it is, that is just the best thing ever. So good for him. I congratulate him. You know, when you get that shot, you better be ready, and he was ready.
Yeah, he took advantage for sure. Is Montana Love ready for the likes of Josh Taylor? Nah. Is he ready for the likes of Gervonta Tank Davis? In my opinion, nah. But at the very least, he earned himself another opportunity for some more fights. Look, this contest took place on Showtime pay-per-view on an undercard. I wouldn't be adverse to seeing him appear on Showtime again. Maybe headlining a ShowBox card, maybe on the undercard of a big fight on Showtime itself, right? He's earned that opportunity with that kind of performance. In terms of Baranchyk, the quick stoppage lets me know that, how can I put it? Sometimes the trainer, particularly if he's been with said fighter for a long time, they see it before anyone else. That's what I suspect here. Coming off of the fight against Zepeda, right, which he was the brutal knockout that he suffered, right? And his trainer probably seen him in the gym. He showed real concern for his fighter. You can't not be upset at that. And I'm with you, Gail. I would not be upset at all if someone would have a talking with him and Baranchyk decides to ultimately call it a day, because the chin resistance is getting weaker and weaker with each fight. And he didn't. And Montana Love is not the biggest puncher in the world. And the fact that he kept getting that reaction from Baranchyk every time he hit him with a hard shot, that's a troubling sign. So shout out to Love, and we just hope that Baranchyk really sits back and looks in the mirror, have a come to Jesus with him, meeting with himself, and ponders should he continue to carry on. Let's move on to some news here. It's going to try to make this a really, really short show, and let's talk about the swirling news that we've been hearing over the past few hours concerning WBC 130-pound champion Oscar Valdez. And I know this may not be quote unquote protocol, but in this discussion, Gail, Daniel, we may have to call out one of our colleagues, and we're going to do that right now. I'll go to you on this. Go back to you on this one, Gail. Mike Coppinger of ESPN early this afternoon tweeted that Valdez had tested positive for a diuretic. He didn't give the specific name of a diuretic, right? But he put that tweet out there, and Boxing Twitter ran with it. I saw other publications write a story on that. I could have wrote this for Three Kings. I could have mentioned this for 3kingsboxing.com. Matter of fact, full disclosure, I did mention it, but I held off. Why? Because I felt something was missing. Turns out that Carpenter had to retract his original statement, um, and later on said that Valdez, in fact, didn't test positive for a diuretic, but he tested positive for stimulant um, phentermine, or however you want to pronounce it. Um, I know you write for nyfights.com. You reached out to your contacts, contacts there, Gail, and let's just say um, Bob Arum, Valdez's promoter, was not one bit happy about this report regarding one Oscar Valdez.
Yeah, Uncle Bob was not amused by this whole thing. So the original report by Coppinger was very vague and very alarming, accusatory. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you report rumors before they become facts. So he had to correct the record. In a subsequent report, actually starting with former ESPN reporter Dan Raphael, he did some investigation and put this a little more into context, got the specifics of the substance, phentermine. Now, what's interesting about this is for those of us old enough to remember, there was a diet craze and a wild frenzy for this miracle drug back in the 90s called fen-phen. Remember that, Michael? Remember the fen-phen?
Yeah.
You're a fitness expert, right? So everyone thought fen-phen was going to be the answer to the obesity crisis until it turned out it had a lot of really dangerous side effects. This is the fen from fen-phen. That's what this stuff is. And it is a diuretic. It's a diet aid. It's used that way, and it is not completely on the banned substances list for VADA. It's permissible under the World Anti-Doping WADA rules as long as you aren't using it for you can use it except for the period commencing at midnight the day before a competition. In other words, the 24 hours that include the fight day, you're not supposed to be using it or test positive for it. So in this case, it's the Valdez team's assertion that, listen, this positive test took place out of competition, follows the rules, and we're okay with this. It's not a prohibited substance in this instance. It comes from herbal tea. The explanation is apparently Valdez wanted to wean himself off his coffee addiction and he's drinking herbal tea. Well, okay. I'm sure there's going to be some people out there that say that sounds a lot like Canelo eating tainted meat, the tainted meat excuse. And it's not exactly a coincidence that they're going to draw parallels because, guess what? Oscar trains in Canelo's gym with the Reynosos here in San Diego. Okay. Well, then you've got, outside of this, the WBC's clean boxing program, which is another separate program. The problem is you've got WADA, VADA, and clean boxing, and their rules aren't exactly the same. So it's complicated. Apparently, WBC is going to have a little discussion with Valdez and his team tomorrow. They claim they are going to withhold judgment until all the facts are in, and everybody gets a fair hearing, like that ever really governed boxing. And then comes our colleague Michael Woods and my editor, the fearless leader of nyfights.com. Well, he did what you are supposed to do. He got a hold of Bob Arum and said, Bob, what's the deal? You worried about this? Is this a problem? Arum absolutely let Coppinger have it. Blasted him as only Bob Arum can because he doesn't give two F's about what anybody ever thinks about what he says. He believes Valdez's story for this, that it's not, and his exact quote is, it's absolutely nothing. It's not a PED. It's not illegal. It's nothing. There was a very, very light amount in the sample. He took herbal tea because he wanted to stop drinking coffee. And for this, the kid gets dragged through the mud for no reason. Now, he thinks the fight will be on. It's not a big deal. And he went on to rip Mike Coppinger, saying it's irresponsible of reporters to do a report like that. It gives journalism a bad name. And any company that gives such a so-called journalist such a position, they should be ashamed of themselves. So he's ripping on ESPN for hiring Mike Coppinger, who in fact replaced Dan Raphael, veteran journalist, probably because, to be fair, Coppinger is a little more versatile and can cover MMA as well as boxing and the little broader variety of combat sports. And we all know from being in the working world, those of us with careers, I can't think of a person who hasn't seen in a company they've worked for or elsewhere, perhaps encountered it themselves, that when you become a more senior employee and you are among the best paid employees, when there are going to be cuts, you cut the big salaries first. Okay, it's a case in point. It's a big damn mess on multiple levels. It's messy and, a black mark for the moment against Valdez and his team. He's in the position of defending himself, and it may or may not be true. The truth is we do not know. We don't know what this means. Really, it's not entirely clear. It's sort of an odd thing to come up, sort of an odd way it came up. And then it's a drug that does have an interesting popular history of the United States. But then you have the continuing problem that is the state of boxing media and boxing journalism. Boxing media and boxing journalism are two things. They are definitely two separate things. Traditional formal journalism says you don't report rumors, you report facts. Until you can prove a rumor to be a fact, you don't mention it. That's the traditional way to approach journalism, to ground it with sources and quote authority figures. Coppinger's very much built a career on breaking news, which means he frequently will go forward with a rumor. Frequently, he's right. Frequently, the rumor gets proven as fact. Sometimes the rumor is proven not to be true and not factual. What should the fallout be? Should the fallout be left with the readers, the fans, who say, well, gosh, he's not credible because a lot of his stuff turns out not to be true? Or do they say, well, I would rather know, and then, if it turns out not to be true, I can let it go? Are readers sophisticated enough and capable to do that? Are they willing to, if he's right 3 times out of 4, is that good enough because they want to hear things first? That few hours makes a difference? It's a bigger question than we can answer on this show. Bottom line is, we've got some kind of situation with Oscar Valdez. We don't know what the facts are. There are clearly 2 sides to the story. He's going to get his opportunity and his team to state their case with the WBC. And certainly he and his promoters are going to have some discussion about what's going on. And we'll see what happens. But stay tuned, folks. And once again, the one absolute proven truth in boxing: do not make non-refundable travel plans.
Yeah. Dot all your I's and cross all your T's, Daniel, before you even think about going out there and trying to be the first for clickbait purposes. Mr. Coppinger, this was unprofessional on your part, and you're left with egg all over your face. This was not worth it, and you are the subject of scorn right now. not just from fans, but from fellow media members like ourselves. Yes, you get respect for what you do, and you're one of the more popular figures, but, and I have to say it, doesn't necessarily mean you're the most liked person in the world. Um, this is another example, again, Daniel, of uh, your favorite word that starts with an F when stuff is out of pocket.
Yep. Uh, yes. And let's first tackle the actual news because when this first came out, when we find out, I am playing a little bit of devil's advocate, but while he did issue a correction, Coppinger was in a way technically correct because the PHEN in the fen is bad that I remember that even when probably I was a kid when that happened. Is still considered in many ways a diuretic because it's used to lose weight. So technically is correct, and technically Bob didn't deny that the test came in positive, but therein lie. But that's the most credit you could probably give. Like Coppinger got things right on the margins, but the problem
But
is
that's a reach, though.
no,
If
no.
he would have done his due
But let me
diligence,
finish.
he could have
But let me
used. Yeah,
finish.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no,
I'm sorry.
but let me finish. That's the thing. On the margins, you have it right. The problem is you're dealing with something that's hard news. When it's something that's hard news, you you know, Mike, Gail knows it about as much as I do. We have this thing in journalism called the inverted pyramid, where we have to gather all of the facts first as we report the story before we even report it. That's where he failed. Because have you waded into it, then you could have dived into the other issues that Gail mentioned that come into this. Whereas, okay, amphetamine can be considered banned substances in many ways under VADA, but not under WADA. And that's been one of the issues that has come up, and it has been weaponized by people that want to discredit VADA. Even though VADA right now, as far as boxing, is the gold standard as far as pro sports when it comes to drug testing. But the fact that it doesn't run fully in line with WADA, it has weaponized people against it. Like, should we remember the battles, or not so much a battle, the way that Alexander Povetkin's people tried to skate around that when he popped before the Wilder fight? They used the same argument. Like, we're using a substance that, or what they caught us was, it's not under WADA rules. That was part of their argument. So there's other issues that fall into it, but part of me is not really surprised. And considering this is ESPN, I'm not really surprised that this falls in line to it, because in some ways, not in everything, in some ways, Carpenter kind of reminds me of another person at ESPN who is also known for breaking news, but who's also not really well liked outside of that area. And that's basketball reporter, the head basketball reporter, I think now, Agent Wojnarowski. If you're on basketball Twitter, you know what he does. It's the reason it's called the Woj Bomb. He breaks the news. Like, he has it in with, I think, more agencies. No, that's Shams. Shams has it in with agencies. Woj has it better with front offices. But he's able to break the news in a way, and he's earned a reputation for it. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that have come up with him, as far as bylines, as far as him holding back younger writers, and his other pieces that are outside of breaking news, have not exactly endeared him to a lot of people. Carpenter's in that same area where okay, he does his job well, but there's other things that are out there. There's other things that fall into that does not endear him. And this is a situation where he's going to have egg on his face. No matter how right you are in the margins, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, at the heart of the matter, you got it wrong. And you also put in the situation where people are going to start throwing shade at the Reynoso camp. Because what happened in Mitsubishi came out? The comparisons with Camelo and the clenbuterol came out. And we know how some segments of boxing Twitter do not believe Canelo at all when it comes to the thing about the tainted meat of clenbuterol, even though it's been proven that it's an issue in Mexico with cattle farms. It brings all that into it. You suddenly not have to put in a dark cloud over the Reynoso camp. And it does also raise the respects. The fact of the matter is that we know sooner or later Valdez is going to jump to lightweight. We know he's getting a little bit too big for 130. We'd rather see the Jamel Herring fight first, but we know that time's coming, and sometimes you do take certain areas. At the end of the day, though, this is also the responsibility of the camp, the responsibility of the trainer, the nutritionist. You have to know what goes into your fighter's body. Because even if it's minute, even if something like that, if it comes up on a test and somebody reports it, you're going to be labeled a cheater. And whether it's right or wrong, unfortunately, that stench is going to follow you. And unfortunately, probably for a bit, it's going to follow Oscar Valdez.
Three things. One, WBC's standard VADA, WADA. They're all. It needs to be a consensus on how to classify um, how to classify um, phentermine, right? Um, and let's hope we get something from that with this meeting between Aram or and Vada. I think it's going to be later on this week. Two, Valdez's camp, Reynoso, strength and conditioning coach, um, could have made this a little bit easier on themselves. Look, there are parties. I know fighters who will get all of their, whether it's supplements, anything they eat, drink, they'll have it go to a third party. I know some people will some fighters have relationships with, say, uh, NFL team physicians, other third party bodies who specifically focus on nutrition and supplements, do their own testing in accord with Olympic standards, with VADA standards and whatnot. So they could not be a possibility of something like this happening. But again, so that's number two. And last but certainly not least, all Coppinger had to do was wait. One word, wait. Uh, you got one job, sir. One damn job. It's not necessarily having to be first in terms of putting out a story. Just be accurate. Be accurate. All he had to do was just wait, get word on this, and see and do some research on himself. Let Google be your friend. It's there for a reason. Do some research on Fin and see that it could be used as a diuretic. But no, he went out there and gave something very general, right? And social media, being what it is, jumped on it. He dug his own hole here. He dug his own hole here. He has to climb himself out of it. Again, you can't do that. You can't do that for a media person. We all have standards here as media folks. Writing for Three Kings, Shout out to 2K. He's always about, sometimes you're not going to be the first, but you have to be accurate because folks got eyes on you. He
But
should
this,
know that being in his position, folks should have are definitely going to have eyes on him. He should know better. He just had to wait and again do his research, do your due diligence instead of just jumping out there with stuff and then just trying to fall back.
but the problem is that is not how the current media universe works. And this is how Coppinger built his career. Breaking news, being the first. He's willing to take the chance that some of these punches don't land, that 3 out of 4 or let's say 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times he knows these folks. He kind of knows the lay of the land with everybody after all this time. So let's say 9 times out of 10 he lucks out and he's right. Do we really think in a month when he's breaking the next story by 5 minutes or a half hour or whatever it is that anyone's going to remember he was wrong about exactly what the substance was, what the diuretic was? Now, in his defense, if all he's told is it was a diuretic that was illegal and it wasn't named and he went with it, there was nothing he could research at that point. Now, what he should do is say, well, diuretics, that's a broad category. Can you be more specific? Well, if you can't be more specific, why not? Why don't you know? Where are you hearing this? Who's telling you this? Who else can I call to ground it? But the need.
And if you can't do any of that,
but here's the problem, and I'm not defending it because I wouldn't do it, but I do understand the pressure they're all under, and then the 24-hour, always on, competing with social media universe. The need for speed trumps, pardon the choice of verb, everything. So he's feeling the heat. He's gotten hired by ESPN to say, because you've got your nose in all the camps and you go drinking with all the right people, and your buddies with whatever bros, feature info in the, inside info, you're valuable to us and we expect you to keep delivering. So it's up to his editors to either say, no, we're not comfortable publishing that, or yeah, we're going to take a shot at it, and once in a while you're going to be wrong, and we're just going to have to take our lumps. Because let's remember, at ESPN, in theory, there's an editor, a producer, a digital, media senior person. I would think that, does the checking, does the fact checking, looks it over, and gives it the approval. He's not self-publishing on a boxing media website or YouTube channel. So, we'll see how much it hurts him in the end, whether the burn makes him a little more cautious about putting his hand on the stove. But most of the time he puts his hand on the stove and he doesn't get burned.
One of these days he will. We'll see what comes out of all of this. We'll see the results of this meeting that's going to take place with Vada. I think with Valdez as representatives, top rank representatives and all parties involved is going to take place. I'm not sure. I heard tomorrow. I'm not sure because I'm not sure of the day this is going to happen. I'm not going to go with the specific day, but it's my understanding it's going to happen later on this week. Let's just see what results from that. And yeah, he's willing to put it out there, but one of these days he's going to get burned. He's going to get burned because
but the other thing is first like I forgot to mention, it's gotten to the point where the tribe where they're holding the fight, they're still mulling whether or not to go forward. So that's one aspect of it. And unfortunately, this is also a side effect of the fact, like I mentioned, basketball media when they came into this. We know when it comes to breaking news, there's an established few that you can trust when it's breaking. I mentioned Wojnarowski, Shams, Kunaria, Mark Stein. Like those, there are people who you can tell, like if they put in breaking news, you can actually trust them. You don't really have that in the boxing world on a big platform. Like the closest thing that we had for a while was Dan Rayfield until he left ESPN. Now, He's doing his own thing, writing for whoever, and on his own Substack. He's probably the most trusted in that aspect. But because he doesn't have that platform of ESPN anymore, he's not seen as like the main source to the common person, to the casual fan. That's the area where Carpenter is unfortunately skating by and trying to sneak into that area. But yeah, eventually, if you throw enough news, you're gonna, in many ways, Jimmy the Greek yourself.
I'll just be interested to see the relationship he has with Aram specifically moving forward, because when you talk boxing division of ESPN, it is ESPN top rank, and Aram's not happy with the dude right now. So yeah, I don't know if there will be any insight Carpenter vis-a-vis Aaron for a good while following, for the next few months, or if Aaron will ever trust him again. And at the very least, when it comes to insiders, the rep uh, is not now is not what it was then regarding to him. But we've talked about this long enough. Let's move on. Move on to some actual to some fighters. Not well, to some fighters who are not necessarily in trouble, Daniel. And I'm talking about one, Gervonta Davis. We talked about him a little bit. Talk about Montana Love. He was given the ultimatum, Tank, who had, I should say, a belt in 3 divisions, a version of the super belt at 130, the regular world belt WBA versions at 35 and 40. The WBA gave him an ultimatum. You're holding these belts at the same time. What are you going to do moving forward? Tank has decided to give up the belt at 130, the super WBA belt at 130. Steven Espinoza of Showtime Sports, head of Showtime Sports, has said that he hopes is their goal to have Tank fight at the end of the year at 135. To me, that says that Tank may give up the belt at 140 as well. Eventually, the future of Tank Davis. Where do you think he should go? I mean, what do you think? What do you think he should do? Stay at 35, because if it is, as we all know, there are a lot of fights from him there. Immediate for me would be Rolly, since he's the number 1 contender. Future prospects for once, Tank Davis.
Well, he's got to be honest with himself about where he can perform best. Yeah, he could probably dominate at 135, and there are some great matchups for him. A little less formidable competition, but can he make the weight? Can he continue to make the weight? Does he have to does he have to drain himself? Does he risk, the effectiveness of his skills in that division? And only he can answer that question. There's no wrong answer here. He stays at 135 and competes there because he can and he's capable and he can make the weight without doing something dangerous. Great. But if he can't, he needs to be honest. He needs to move up. Yes, it might be more challenging, but no guts, no glory, young man. Prove yourself. Either way, he needs to test himself, talk to his team, be very realistic. He might want to get some very solid medical and nutrition advice. He shouldn't sacrifice his health for this, just because he thinks, that he's probably going to be more dominant at 135 than 140. And I really think that's probably where the decision lies for him. But it's a good problem to have, actually. He just needs to make the decision, make it definitive, and stick to it. And he's got a little time to do that. So I hope he wisely assesses his options.
I agree in that front. I definitely agree, because 130, yeah, Tank is not making 130. He's just not, unfortunately. He was already struggling to make 135. It's one of the reasons why the move to 140 with Barrios was made. So giving up the belt at 130, and also looking at, like I said, at the promotional divide, you don't have a lot of fighters, especially if you want to unify. A lot of the other belt holders are on the other side, and you seem to be his team seems to be a person that wants to stay within the PBC bubble. So staying at lightweight, which is probably the best decision, and having fight Rolly makes sense because hopefully at that point, then you're gonna have the situation sorted out between Ryan Garcia, Jojo Diaz, and Devin Haney. That situation should sort itself out in the meantime, and at that point, and you can see what's going on in that front because also going to 140. Yeah, I agree. No guts, no glory, but at a certain point, we saw it a little bit in the Barrios fight. The power may not be getting up there at 140 as you thought it would. And it's one thing to do that against somebody like Barrios. If you do that somebody like Rougarou or Josh Taylor, it's not going to look good. So it's a good move to have. It does free up a belt in the WBA, and now they can sort this out. I fully expect his next fight is going to begin against Rolly because the trash talk would just be beautiful, PBC-esque.
Oh my goodness, it's so right there. It's so obvious that a fight between Tank and Rolly, um, it would draw big numbers as you look, boxing Twitter, boxing social media, particularly amongst the younger sect that would eat that fight up. I personally want to see Tank try to try to dry out as much as he can. Well, not dry out in the physical sense, but again, because I can't get away from the fact that there's Haney in and around Haney there, Garcia, right? Rolly. Garcia has talked big and bad about him all last year before his self-imposed hiatus. I still want to see that fight. Tank and Rolly, two big punchers. Even Tank and Teofimo, two big punchers. I know Teofimo is on the other side, but money talks. With enough money, all of these fights can be made. I just want to see him. All of those possibilities there. It would be a shame if he was to go stay at 140 and just leave all that on the table. Um, I would just feel some kind of way about it. Uh, and that junior welterweight, a lot of that's just dependent on Josh Taylor, what he's going to do. Um, he has a fight coming up November, December, a mandatory defense. He may leave the division after that and try to shoot for a fight against Terrence Crawford. I just think for Tank, the better possibilities, the bigger money is at 35. I just think he just needs to hire a good nutritionist, and just impose some self-discipline. He can hold that weight. He just has some self-discipline. And if he does 135, that's the weight for him, first and foremost, before all the other big names. Get that fight with Rolly. Rolly called him out after his last win. That's the fight I want to see first and foremost. Should Tank continue on to fight? Should Espinoza get a fight for Tank Davis at the end of the year? Let's move on to some fights that's happening later on this week. I'm kind of going to go backwards here because there's a fight tomorrow. Gail and Daniel early tomorrow morning. Matter of fact, I'm gonna try to get up and catch that fight live. It's taking place in Japan. But let's move on to fights this weekend. Josh Warrington, right? He had the IBF belt. Good, significant fights, making good paydays over in England. He decided to give up that IBF strap. Stepped in the ring in March against a little-known, unheralded Mexican by the name, unheralded, little-known Mexican, excuse me, by the name of Mauricio Lara. And yeah, uh, he made Josh Warrington dreams of a big fight at 126 and 130 pounds was temporarily halted as Lara came in there like um, Freddy Krueger and just gave a nightmare of a beatdown to Warrington. Stopped him in 9 rounds and just pummeled him all night long. No one saw it coming. Um, it was such a beating that makes you wonder. Um, yeah, it just puts some serious questions about Warrington. They're going to do it again in September in Leeds. I can't get that first fight out of my head, Gil. I know Warrington says he's fully engaged this time. He's fully healthy, but I'm sorry. He was bounced around in that first fight, pillow to post. Nothing funny about it. I just don't see Warrington beating him. I just think that Lara too big, too strong, too powerful, and Warrington can't get away from him. If he can't get away from him, he's going to be in trouble again.
Yeah, I think so. I think he might be more competitive, but Lara has so many weapons. He there's no reason to believe he can't do it again. And now he has the knowledge and the confidence from having done it once already. On the flip side, Warrington knows what happened. He's got a big hill to climb to turn it around. And fights are won and lost in the mind first. Lara goes in with the knowledge, the hard knowledge that he did it once, the confidence that he could pull it off. He was brave enough to take his shot, go into enemy territory. He's going to do it again. That takes some nerve. He knows the crowd is not on his side. He does not give a shit about that. He knows that he took him out once. He knows he can take him out again. And Warrington is the one that has the hard job of flipping the script. I do think he'll be better. I don't think he can be good enough. You're right. Lara is bigger, or his punching power is impressive. He's got that Mexican warrior attitude. That's a lot. That's a lot to ask. So I hope Warrington makes it competitive, feels like no matter win or lose that he gave his very best. And since I think it's going to be lose, you can walk out of the ring knowing you truly left it all on the table. That's at least something. But I think that's about all he's going to get.
And based on pre-fight's comments, Daniel, um, Lara has he's fighting with a chip on his shoulder, um, as dominant as he was in the first fight. He is saying now that he's going to be even extra mean for this fight. He feels that he's not getting respected, and I perish the thought. He looked pretty mean and savage in that first fight. If he gets even more, if he even fights with more anger in this fight with more bad intentions, oh boy.
Well, I can see where the chip is coming from, considering where the fight's being held. Normally, in a situation like this, you would have this fight either in the U.S. or Mexico. But no, we're having it back here in Leeds, where if Warrington can drag it out to a decision, you have to worry about UK home cooking. And that's the part of the area where I think he's going to be. He knows the cards are stacked against him in that front, where Warrington is the big draw. Warrington was a hometown guy. Yes, you knocked him out again, but Warrington's job is to just drag it out as much as he can. But I don't think he can, unfortunately. And this is somebody that likes Josh Warrington as a fighter. Unfortunately, though, Lara is bigger. He is stronger. And like Gail mentioned, now has the knowledge that he can hurt you. And that makes a fighter even more dangerous when he knows he can hurt you, rather than just speculate. What Warrington has to do in this fight, he has to see whether he can actually hurt Lara in this instance. If that happens, then you have a hell of a bar burner. I don't see that happening though. I see Warrington probably faring a little bit better, doing a little bit better defense, but he's gonna get caught probably by one or two good shots. It's not gonna probably be an emphatic knockout, but it's gonna be a situation where he's gonna go down and he's not gonna get up.
Unless Warrington catches him with a lucky punch, that's the only way I can see him hurting him. And Lara understands that he can hurt Warrington and hurt him with a multitude of shots. I see Warrington trying to box more, trying to get the jab off more, but he's not a boxer by nature. He's not a mover by nature. He's athletic and he has fast hands, but I don't think he has great boxing skills. If you understand what I'm saying. And again, he has the mindset of a guy who likes to come forward, particularly when things get heated. That was his problem in the first fight after he got hurt early. I think he will revert back to form, and again, he doesn't have the tools to stay away from Lara long term, and because he doesn't, he may last the distance. But I'm picking Lara to win this fight. Going to go to an undercard here. Katie Taylor's whoever's Katie Taylor's defending her unified lightweight titles against a lady by the name of Helms. I'm not really that familiar with her, so I'm gonna rely on you guys to discuss this fight. Not Helm, but Han. Excuse me, Jennifer Han. Um, what do we expect here from Katie Taylor, who's arguably, no offense, Clarissa Shields, but who's arguably the top women's fighter in the game?
There's an interesting discussion among the top three, and there are some honest differences of opinion depending on what you value. Is it Katie Taylor? Is it Clarissa Shields? Is it Amanda Serrano? They're all absolutely in contention, and I think you can draw a line under the three. So Taylor's going to want to assert herself in this title defense. She is the unified champion. Han will be an interesting opponent. She's an American. She's from El Paso. She's a Texan. She is the former IBF title holder in the division, but she hasn't had a fight since before the pandemic. And the title was stripped from her due to inactivity. Part of that inactivity was due to the fact she had a second child. So there's something there to be said. But she is a solid fighter. She was a featherweight title holder for 5 years before she had to vacate. She's moved up a division to face Taylor. So she's absolutely legitimate. She's only lost one serious fight, and it was when she left the United States to take a fight overseas, and she lost a majority decision in a very close fight in Korea against Ji Hai Woo. That's no disgrace at all, that kind of loss. So, yeah, it's a mandatory on paper. Taylor's certainly seen much tougher opponents. This woman is 38 years old, mother of two, been out of the ring. Who knows what kind of ring rush she's going to have. But she is a legitimate opponent, even if she's quite an unknown opponent. And I'll say it's a bit of a commentary on where women's boxing has been, that a woman who definitely has skills, is a former champion, has proven herself, is so unknown. She did have a very good amateur career, but she did not have an Olympic career. And that also proves that the Olympic platform is so important for women, has made so much difference. Look at Taylor, look at Shields. The Olympics was their stepping stone to where they are now. Serrano has done it just by sheer activity and skill. So Han, I hope, will prove at least challenging at times. I think it's a very, very safe bet that Taylor will win, that Taylor, is just simply the more active, the more skilled, will take her apart. She's not going to have to extend herself. She's probably, not going to find herself in any deep water. But she can't overlook her and she can't take it easy. So there to be great. Good for you, Jennifer Hahn. People will know who you are after this fight.
I'm going to go to you. I'm kind of skip your commentary on this one, Daniel, because I'm trying to cut this show and not have this go too long. A little bit, it's going a little bit longer than I wanted. Real talk, but let's focus on the fight that's happening in a few hours. Actually, from giving our live recording here on August 31st, this fight is going to happen September 1st, the early morning hours of September 1, our time here in the U.S. As one of the best fighters in the lower weight divisions, Kazuto Ioka, putting his WBO 115-pound strap on the line against former unified 105-pound champion Francisco Rodriguez Jr. Mandatory title defense for Ioka is going to be held at an empty arena in Tokyo due to rising numbers of COVID-19 and the Delta variant, COVID-19 specifically the Delta variant of coronavirus, right? And Ioka is coming off of what I will argue a career best win against Tanaka. He's been out the ring since, in large part to a very public feud, the Japanese Boxing Commission, over what turned out to be a false test. But good fight on paper, Daniel. Rodriguez is a former champion. He's on a long winning streak, right? He hasn't lost since he hasn't lost in over 5 years. Um, but I saw his fight against Donny Nietes. He lost in 12. Donny Nietes outboxed him, right? I look at Ioka and what he can do in the ring. I see a guy with a very similar skill set to Nietes, who ironically the two fought Ioka and Nietes. They fought in December 2018, and Nietes beat him very, very close decision. There are folks who believe that Ioka won that fight. I look at that fight, Daniel, and I see a similar fight happening between Rodriguez and Ioka. I think that Ioka is one of the most shrewd, one of the more cunning, intelligent fighters in the game, right? Particularly with I forget his Cuban trainer. If you could help me out, his trainer, his Cuban trainer. His name escapes me right now, but I can't remember his name. Anyway,
I'm gonna look it up.
But anyway, I think that Ioka at age in his early 30s, 32, I think he is, he's fighting better than ever. He showed it in the fight in the way he dissected and ultimately dismantled Tanaka. And that kind of form, I think he's going to show it again against Rodriguez tomorrow or early tomorrow morning.
Yeah, this is gonna be something that is very, very, very.
Salas, that's his name. Yeah,
Yeah, this is like
that's
I said,
his name, Salas.
this is gonna be something that is gonna be very, 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 very early in the morning. Like this is something where you're gonna have to bring your coffee to watch, and hey, it's Kazuto. You have to watch because this is a very motivated Kazuto. Like we know the issues of the commission, which they say it's a test, but it's more like cultural issues, the tattoos in that area, because it's still, even though it's more somewhat accepted, it's still somewhat shunned in Japan when it comes to tattoos because of ties to obviously to the Yakuza. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have a motivated Kazuto who knows that if he has a good performance, he can easily just say, like he can easily just say, you know what, Casimiro, you step aside. I want the monster. And that's a fight that's been a long time coming between Inoue and Kaz and Ioka. And he's going to be motivated to do it. Now, you did mention Rodriguez. You mentioned it. Half a decade without a loss. However, the last loss, he was outboxed, and Kazuto doesn't have to knock you out. He can outbox you, and he's very motivated to do so. I see the exact same scenario as you do. He's going to outbox him. He's going to outjab him, outdistance him. And Rodriguez is going to have his moments, but it's not going to be enough to come out with a victory there. But I want to see what's next then after that for Costo. I want to see if my suspicions are correct, any challenges anyway afterwards.
Here's the thing for me, Gail. Um, Kosei Tanaka has faster hands. He has faster feet, um, greater punch distribution than Rodriguez, and yet he couldn't do nothing with Ioka at any point of the fight. At parts, Ioka played with him. Um, he got in his head mentally before the fight, and then he took him to school during the fight. I just don't see a scenario where Rodriguez can do better than what Tanaka did. He may last longer because he may have the better chin, but from a boxing and skills perspective, I just personally just don't see it. Just don't see it unless he lands a big punch.
100% agree with you. Ioka is all about real estate, real estate, real estate. You have to get to somebody to be able to punch them. And speed helps. Speed does help. But, you've got to be able to get to them. And let's think about it. Your Dennis Zugas just won his fight in part, not completely, but in part against Pacquiao because he controlled the distance. He controlled the real estate. Pacquiao still got fast enough hands, better than average, maybe not to the peak he was in his prime, but he couldn't get into position. Ugas and Ioka share the same trainer. Not a coincidence.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. Um, I want to thank, uh, excuse me, right quick. I want to thank Sean for joining us in the live chat, for checking us out live. If you like what you heard, or now or either at a later date, if you catch this on replay on YouTube, please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button. If you're checking us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, please make sure to subscribe. For those who check us out on Apple Podcasts, would love to hear your review. 5-star review will get read on the show. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show as usual with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from Community Digital News, NY Fights, Falcon Valley Group. Let the folks know where they can find you.
I am easy to find with my regular work at Communities Digital News. That's COMM Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com. Also rendering my opinions on occasion with nyfights.com, another great resource. All boxing sites offer a little bit different take, a little bit different attitude and approach. Shop around and find what you like. There's something to suit all. And like Michael said, if you're listening to us and you like what you hear, check with us regularly, subscribe. That helps us out. Leave a review. That helps even more. And heck, if you don't like what we have to say, let us have it.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Daniel from the Inscriber and For Boxing News. For those who want to talk about the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, specifically as it pertains to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
As folks, you can find me on Twitter, RAWKZ99. Definitely catch my show. Like I said, our latest show we put it in on Thursday night. It's up on SoundCloud and Anchor. Like I said, definitely catch on this one because it is Labor Day weekend. It's going to be a little bit Let's talk about, but we never know what's gonna happen because we may see some developments in this Valdez situation that could change a lot of things in the next 24 hours.
If you want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is on social media, Brother JR at Brother JR76. On Twitter, as I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out all things regarding the show and for all information, just go to, um, please go to the website. Give me a quick second. I'm having some technical issues on my end. My apologies for that. Please go to the website, p4pboxingreport.com. The front page, you'll find links to where to find us all over the podcast realm, where to where to follow the show, I should say, all over social media, where you can email. You can email p4pboxing at p4pboxreport, where you can donate, cash me, PayPal, donation links, let donation be the donation as well. If you want to get your fitness game up, please check out my coaching page. I'm a coach for Beachbody. Just check out my coaching page for all things Beachbody on demand. And please take advantage of that 2-week free trial. It's concurrent, it's throughout the year, anytime. Yeah, 2 weeks of free access on Beachbody on demand. If you like what you see, including the new boxing based program, 10 rounds, I suggest you may want to check that out and make that full time. 3 days of fitness around 3 days of cardio around boxing based routines, 2 days of weightlifting, all around balanced workout program. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Ioka and Rodriguez. We will do a recap of the Warrington Lara rematch. We will do a recap of Katie Taylor and Jennifer Hahn. And for the time being, we will do a preview of Oscar Valdez's fight. That's an asterisk on that against Canciaco, Canciacal, excuse me, Canciacal. Um, Mandatory defense, I believe that is. And on the undercard of that, should that card still happen, uh, really, really low key, really good fight in the flyweight division between Junto Nakatani defending the WBO 112-pound strap against former 108-pound champion Angel Acosta. That card for the time being is going to be on ESPN Plus. I really suggest not only you check out the Valdez bout, but keep your eye on that Nakatani bout. That's one of the best fights of the year vis-a-vis the lower weight divisions, and a fighter who we mentioned before here on Pound for Pound Box Report. I had the pleasure of interviewing the young kid, a fighter you like a lot, Gail, Alexander Zayas. He's going to be in a 10-round bout, welterweight, junior, middleweight contest. So keep an eye out on him. And also, Tony Yoka is going to fight on that same day on ESPN Plus. Philip Hergovich is going to headline a card on DAZN as well. And for those who are interested, I believe the De La Hoya fight comeback, quote unquote, is still on for the 11th, Gale. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah, he's making a quote quote comeback against
Woo!
Vitor Belfort. So yeah, for those who want to check that out, uh, David Hay is going to be on an undercard. Anderson Silva in a boxing match. So for those who want to check out that,
Calling himself a legend fight, I'll at least he's being honest.
legend David Hay. I wouldn't go that far, but
well, that's what they. Well, legend is the status of a retired fighter putting on an exhibition, right? He's not
gotcha.
competitive. Yeah, that's in Triller speak, by the way. You know, that's Triller speak. So, you have to speak the language.
Yeah, so we will make sure to preview all of those fights. So again, thanks Sean for joining us in the live chat. For Gail, for Daniel, I'm your host Michael. This has been episode 337 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night, y'all.
Good night, y'all.
Good evening, good night.
Shout out to Bishop Sycamore.